Wait, there's something very weak coming through.
That makes me really happy. Just all these, like, sound guys have this, like, well, not so hidden now, but, like, this, like, you know, game they play with each other. Like, you know, let's just throw that in there. We'll just see who finds it. I love that. Exactly. That makes me happy.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
Some people call me the space cowboy. Yeah.
Hello, fellow Galactic listeners. I'm Heather Allred, and this is WSTR Galactic Public Access, a Star Wars podcast. Welcome to episode 60. Today we're going to talk about the space cowboy, Han Solo. Joining me in the discussion today is Todd Hoffman.
Well, hello there.
Hello.
Hello.
So once again, check us out on social media, WSTR Media. All lowercase, all one word. So, Todd, our main topic today.
And now for our feature presentation.
Yes.
Han Solo.
Han Solo. So
his character arc.
Yeah, the character arc that is loosely based on, I think, a cowboy. So we're gonna be talking. We're gonna talk about cowboys today. You know, so right.
Sorry.
Yeehaw! Is that your best cowboy right there? That was good.
It was the most impromptu one anyway.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, I thought, today we could kind of talk about, because in the teaser, there was a little shot there when they're kind of on the beach and they show a nice close up of his holster and it got that Western vibe going on, it's kind of two men squaring off in the old town square, settling their differences by the only means necessary with a cowboy is like, a shoot off. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah,
duh, that's how you do it. Back in the Western days. So, he follows Han Solo follows a pretty good repertoire of cowboys. So, you got the Duke, John Wayne, a very famous cowboy. Clint Eastwood, Dirty Harry, another classic cowboy. And then like a Butch Cassidy is another,
yes,
pretty decent cowboy. But yeah, I mean, Han Solo kind of follows that archetype of like a gunslinger,
True.
Instead of like or horse and buggy, he travels in, a certain cargo ship named the Millennium Falcon. So he's doing that, and then of course, he's got Chewbacca, who's kind of like his trusted companion on the, and like I would even say like his like whole outfit too, don't you think?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the holster,
the
little,
vest. Oh, sure.
Yeah, the vest.
The holster.
Yeah. The holster kind of like low on the hip, like, like any cowboy. And he's just not wearing a 10-gallon hat. That's kind of doesn't fit really.
Would have messed with the hair, though, man. Would have messed with the.
It would. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit, So I thought it'd be good if we just kind of go through a couple, kind of see where a couple cowboy movies in Hollywood and see how those kind of relate with the whole Han Solo cowboy vibe that we got going on. So
I like it.
All right. So first up, Silverado. Have you ever seen Silverado, Heather?
I have not.
Oh. Well, you're missing out.
I know.
This came, it came out in 1985, and the rambling man Emmett assembles a group of misfits cowboys, which you got Kevin Costner, Kevin Kline, Danny Glover. After helping a group of settlers track down a pack of thieves, Emmett and his men descend on trouble down in the town of Silverado to seek their fortunes. And soon after arriving, they discover that their town has fallen into the grasp of a greedy rancher, Ethan, and a corrupt cop, and with whom many of Emmett's men have unfinished business with. So it's a very classic Western, got a little vengeance, and you got like little motley crew of misfits, so a very classic movie. I would highly recommend it. I don't know if you can get that on Netflix though. You know what I'm saying? Because that's like 1985. So
sure.
But it's go ahead.
Oh, my family has a pretty extensive movie collection. I'm sure my dad has it.
You're like, Dad, you got Silverado?
Dad,
yeah.
help me out.
Yeah, help me out. You got to get woke on the old Westerns, Another one that's really good is Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. That came out in 1969.
Paul Newman.
Yes. And Robert Redford,
And Robert Redford, yes.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like I think it won a couple of Oscars, and it's got that just wonderful, like, kind of chemistry between the two, and, bunch of cowboys and doing their thing. So, that's a good one. Another one. Now, this one has some Star Wars roots, too. So,
okay.
Have you heard of the Magnificent Seven?
I have, yes.
Okay, so that came out in like 1960, and then Quentin Tarantino just recently redid this movie as well.
Yes.
But it's got a great cast. It's got good music. It's got Steve McQueen. Can't beat that. And
totally.
But the tie back here is that John Sturges, who did this, is actually the Magnificent Seven is a remake of Kurosawa's 1954 classic Seven Samurai. And this one is George Lucas loves some Kurosawa. So, there's a lot of influences in Star Wars from even the Seventh Samurai, and that became the Magnificent Seven. And yeah, it's just a real cool kind of vibe there. So there's that movie, which is really good.
Okay. Excellent.
You haven't seen that? You haven't seen the old Magnificent Seven?
I have seen parts of the old one.
Yes.
I went to watch the new one, but my brother said you might not like it.
Well,
and I don't know if that's coming from because it's Quentin Tarantino, and sometimes his violence is a little bit more than I can take.
Yes, yeah, right, exactly.
He's got issues, but that, so I haven't seen the new one, and I have seen scenes from the old one.
Right,
so.
Right, yeah, exactly. Okay, another good one. This kit goes back 1968, Once Upon a Time in the West. So Henry Fonda is basically a cold-hearted killer. And then it's just really scenic. It's got some good imagery going on. It's just a really cool kind of epic Western, and has, again, another cool kind of music score that you don't really see in Westerns. It's a really interesting take on, a cowboy and, being kind of bad, but still good, For
sure.
You know what I'm saying? Okay. Now here's, I hope you've seen this one. So Clint Eastwood's 1992 Unforgiven. Have you seen that?
I have. It's been a while, and I've only seen it once, so I don't remember all the little nitpicky parts of it. But yes. Well,
okay. So here's the 10,000 foot view. So he's a ruthless killer. Yeah, he's a ruthless killer turned pig farmer. Like, you can't. I mean, that's
obvious
Cowboy.
Career choice.
Yeah,
totally.
And then he takes on one last job. There's always that job, and this Eastwood's in it, and he's directing it, and It's fantastic. It basically won in 92. It won Best Picture and Best Director.
Yeah.
And probably a couple more, but I know it won Best Picture and Best Director. But
excellent.
It's just, I think that's a huge part of like Han Solo is that reluctant hero, and I think you find there's definitely that vibe in Westerns, because like cowboys are tough and all that kind of stuff and all that moxie. And I feel like Han Solo fits that very, very well,
for sure. Yeah.
So yeah, it's just, he was a bad guy. Then he's a pig farmer. It's like, hey, I live a simple life, but there's always that one last thing to get you back in the groove.
That one offer, that one thing that you're like, I just gotta show one more time that
that I got it. I still got it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, exactly. Okay. This one's a pretty good one too. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. 1966 most famous spaghetti western. Do you know what a spaghetti western is?
Like by definition, not really.
I mean, it gets thrown around a lot. So I was like,
I just assume it's got like a lot more silliness to it. Is how I've always defined it, and that's probably totally wrong.
It is. It's totally wrong. Well, it can fall into that too. It's like, but westerns were such. It's kind of like, I guess it would be like something like related to like Bollywood movies now. So basically a spaghetti western, what that means is that it's an American Old West film cheaply made in Europe and usually produced by or directed by Italian folks. So it's a spaghetti western.
Who totally understand the culture.
Yeah.
I get it.
So, so The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is one of those spaghetti westerns that started it all in 1966. So it's just it has like a really good soundtrack. It's super flamboyant, but it's actually really well made, and and really includes a authentic moving Civil War sequence that's pretty cool. So there's a lot of meat in this one, but mostly spaghetti westerns mean that it's like just trying to churn out a movie and make a profit, So
gotcha.
Yeah, so
I have learned something today.
Right, exactly. Okay, so there's another one that's good. It's called The Searchers. Okay, and this one, this is the Duke. This is John Wayne. He does like a really good performance in that, and he's like this really cool kind of like anti-hero, so it's basically these racist outsiders search for his kidnapped niece still astounds in dark power, beauty, and all-around magnificence. It's complex. It's got layers, lots of layers, like Shrek. It's got layers. You got to unpeel the onion. But yeah, Wayne's like this kind of anti-hero, and it's really cool. So yeah, it's another. Again, it fits in that kind of cowboy kind of vibe that Han Solo does. So,
for sure. Well, especially that like anti-hero thing. The more that we learn about him as Solo.
Yes.
Got that anti-hero thing going on. For sure. Yeah.
Okay. So,
yes.
This one you got, I mean, this is a classic. Lone Ranger.
I'm ready.
Lone Ranger. Yeah.
Yes. Who is that masked man?
Right. The Lone Ranger, of course, Yeah. I guess I didn't really know the backstory of it because I always remember watching it as a kid. But the backstory is that he is the sole survivor of a group of ambushed Texas Rangers and who is nursed back to health by Tonto. So then they kind of roam the Old West together, him and Tonto, and they defend the helpless from the forces of evil,
Ooh.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, I mean, and the TV series like started in 1949, and then it went all the way to 1957. So
wow. It's a good time.
Pretty good run for Lone Ranger, and that's that like I remember that as a kid, like on watching reruns of Lone Ranger, and good old Disney remade it in 2013 with Johnny Depp as Tonto, and I think
it's Tonto. Arnie Herman.
Was it?
What is it? Arnie Herman. What is his name? Arnold. Wait. Hammer? I don't know. I'm just making up words now.
Just making up words. No, I thought wasn't it Brendan Fraser that was? Who was the Lone Ranger?
It was this Arnie Harmer guy. I gotta Google it. Do we gotta Google it?
Yeah, I think we do because
he's gonna listen. He's gonna be mad at us that we don't. I mean,
we know Tonto, but we don't know.
It's hard to not know Johnny Depp though. If you think about
I know. He's actually pretty good in this one. Like he's not like
Armie Hammer.
Okay, see, there you go.
What is his name? Yeah.
So you weren't making up words.
I'm not making up words. I just didn't sound right together in my head.
All right, we'll see. Oof.
Anyway, sorry.
I'm glad we cleared that up because that would have been bad, But yeah, it just I think of Lone Ranger and Tonto. Because I think we were joking a couple weeks ago, but like, how the Chinese are talking about Disney, like, changing the name just so it doesn't have Star Wars in it. And like,
for sure.
I mean, he's Han Solo is like the Space Ranger. I mean, that's like, it's the equivalent of, Lone Ranger, Han Solo, and like, his trusty sidekick, Chewbacca is the same thing as kind of Lone Ranger and Tonto,
Yep.
And that's another theme, like animal sidekicks and
oh sure,
in Western. So like Roy Rogers had his trusty dog Bullet. Mm-hmm. So and then Dale Evans had his horse Buttermilk. I mean, who doesn't have a cool horse named like Buttermilk?
Seriously.
So a lot of cool, there's a lot of tie-ins there.
Now,
do you know?
Go ahead. Can I pause this for a second?
Yeah.
Are we classing Chewbacca as the animal sidekick, or just because he's furry? I'm just saying.
I think he's
species.
Yeah, I don't think he's. It's a loose connection. Yeah, he's not. I mean,
right.
He's a Wookiee. He's an animal, but he's definitely an intelligent being. He's not just like some kind of dog or anything. But that's a great segue into. Do you know where the idea of Chewbacca came from, Heather?
I do not.
What? Okay.
So this is my second time to learn something. This podcast not only is fun, it is educational.
It's educational, right? So. Yes. As we know, George Lucas was a big like hot rod guy. That was his thing. He loved doing hot rods, and he almost died. He got in a horrible crash, and he's like, you know what? I'm gonna stick with films. I think films are safer.
Yeah.
Right. I I'm sure later he's like, now I could do special effects, and it's kind of where pod racing and all that stuff. Very fast, very dangerous, but. The idea for Chewbacca basically came from his dog. His dog was a big, hairy Alaskan Malamute, and his name was Indiana. So it's a double. This is a double whammy because basically when the dog would always sit in the passenger seat of his car, and it was kind of like his little co-pilot. Yeah. So that's kind of where it came from. And then of course his dog Indiana, that's where another famous franchise came from, Indiana Jones. It's a twofer.
Oh my goodness.
It's a 2-for-1 deal, So that's where I was kind of getting at, co-pilot, trusty steed, trusty dog, trusty co-pilot, trusty companion like Tonto, and boom, you got Chewbacca right there, man. So
That's incredible.
I know. But yeah, like we kind of talked about before, his outfit kind of matches what a cowboy would wear with the vest, and the 77 version, he's kind of got, a V-neck, kind of sort of showing some chest hair there, got the vest, the pants, the whole thing. He just missing really the hat,
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, I think he definitely has that vibe, and, remember the, what's that band called? Stevie Miller Band,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The Joker, the Space Cowboy, some people call me the Space Cowboy. Some call me the Gangster of Love. So, yeah, I think, it's like, I think that's what we're going to hopefully find a little bit more about Han Solo in the new Solo film, is like a little bit more behind him, what makes him kind of that, I wouldn't say he's callous, but he's definitely, who introduced themselves like, I'm Han Solo, like.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, but I think when you look at the idea of Space Cowboy as a whole, and you look back at these movies and just visually, they, or with that idea of a Western movie, and they go into the bar, through the double door swinging things, and there's people gambling over there, and, shots and the stuff. And, obviously, I actually just recently watched A New Hope again. When we're first introduced to Han, and him kind of just like chilling at his table, very, leg up cowboy kind of almost feel that way, and so with the Solo movie and kind of getting more backstory with Lando too, I'm intrigued by the whole gambling component of that Space Cowboy with this other guy. So totally on track.
What do you do when you get into, like, in any Western? Like, where do you go? You go to a saloon,
saloon. That's the better word than bar. Yeah.
Well, it's okay. I mean, it's like, so you go to a saloon, and, there's always some crazy, piano going, in Star Wars. It's like, figure Dan and the module nodes busting out some tune, and
totally.
Yeah. And then the other thing that's kind of very Western is like when he, we all know Han shot first. Let's just get past that. Okay. So when he leaves, he flips the bartender a nice little coin to, sorry about the mess, like there's such, it's such a Western thing, it's like, yep, that was me. Sorry. Here you go, buddy.
Right.
clean up poor little Greedo,
Oh man.
So, but I mean, even that whole, the way that sequence goes is just like, he's got the feet up on the table, they show him, reaching down and grabbing the gun and, getting out of the holster. I mean, it's like so good. So classic Western, it's awesome.
For sure.
All right. So here's another, I feel like, it's like educational night. It's like, okay.
Okay.
Have you heard of the Wilhelm scream?
I have not.
Oh my gosh. Well, you should, because it's in over 372 movies.
Wow.
And all over the place. So the journey begins in 1951 in a film called Distant Drums, and the scream is often used when somebody is shot and falls from a great height or explosion or something like that. But the actual name comes from Private Wilhelm, who's a character in another movie called The Charge at Feather River. it's a 1953 Western,
Okay.
And the character gets shot in the thigh with an arrow. And yeah, so it's kind of like this long distance scream, and we'll play it here, make sure everyone knows what it is. But basically, it's got a very distinct sound. Okay. And Mr. Ben Burt, who is doing all the sound effects, for A New Hope and getting, is getting all kinds of different sounds and all that kind of stuff. He basically found this while he was kind of looking for things to do, and in Star Wars, in which he used it in 1977, obviously, was when he shoots Luke Skywalker. They're on the bridge. Like trying to get across, and he blasts away the controls, right? And he shoots a stormtrooper, right? And he falls off the ledge, and yeah, the stormtrooper falling, he makes the Wilhelm scream, So,
sure.
So basically it's in everything that he touches. So it's been used in a bunch of different movies, and once you hear it, you can't go back. It's pretty much it's pretty much everywhere. Yeah, it's kind of like a sound nerd thing that Ben Burt did, and kind of re-invoking that Western, and it's used in, he coined it first, and yeah, it's kind of, it's used in all the Star Wars films. Indiana Jones used it, and other sound designers are like, hey, this is pretty cool, montage to a very old Western. And yeah, so that's the Wilhelm scream. So
that makes me really happy. Just all these like sound guys have this like, well, not so hidden now, but like this like, game they play with each other. Like, let's just throw that in there. We'll just see who finds it. I love that.
Exactly.
That makes me happy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's super cool. And it's, once you hear it, you're like, oh, I know that, but it just, it's kind of one of those things where, some of the most common things you just miss, because there's so much going on. But I think we're finding that more and more in modern film, like just like how, some of these old techniques that they use, not only in sound, but like visually, they're kind of going back to in, newer films, which is kind of a nod, like, hey, not that you're reinventing the wheel, but it's just like, these are things that, have used before, and why not use them again,
Right.
But yeah, so that's kind of like old Westerns, and but we got, I think at least recently, we definitely have a couple modern Han Solos that have taken the Han Solo kind of archetype and brought it again to the forefront. And one, I know you're familiar with this one.
Okay.
Joss Whedon's Firefly.
I am indeed familiar. Yes.
Yeah. So
Malcolm Reynolds.
Yes. So tell me a little bit. Tell me a little bit about Malcolm Reynolds.
Yeah. So he is captain of the ship Serenity in the television series Firefly that was sadly only on for a season.
It's one of the weirdest things ever.
I do think it's part of the beauty of the show, though, is that we, Fox canceled the show, and there was a great cry around the world. We got the movie Serenity to sort of wrap up the story. And then, much like in other universes, there's been some, comics that expand the story and things like that. But
but basically one season and then a movie. And then
a movie. And it's got this insane following of people.
Right. And
like the fact that it was I think 2000, like early 2000, 2002, maybe.
Yes. Yeah.
I think. Yeah. So when it's 2018 now, so we're looking at 16 years, and people are still cosplaying and excited to, meet Joss and the actors and everything, and that just says a lot. But
it does.
This wonderful mix of the Earth in the future. Basically, the Earth was no longer inhabitable, and so we all went up into space. And Jess talked about how the two main superpowers country-wise were the U.S. and China, and how they sort of merged together, which is where you see a lot of the different cultures combined. But yeah, I mean, he's got the suspenders. He doesn't wear a vest, but he's got the suspenders with the button-up, shirt and the low hip holster thing.
Does he wear a duster? Doesn't he wear like a long?
But he wears a long duster. Yeah.
Yes.
So he doesn't have the vest, but he's got the long duster. He's a brown coat, which is all part of the show and the military movement. So no brown coats.
Right.
But yeah, and he's got his, faithful sidekick Zoe, his first mate. Obviously, he's got a whole crew though, which we don't totally necessarily see in some of Star Wars, but I'm excited to have that crew element come in the new Solo movie. I think that'll be a good comparison. But yeah, he's a gun slinger, but yeah. I love Malcolm Reynolds.
I love him.
I do.
Yeah. So, but I mean, again, he's a modern. I mean, it's a sci-fi. I think it's at like 500 years in the future, blah blah blah. But I mean, it still has that kind of Western vibe thing going on.
Yeah, he's in for the next, payday. Yeah. What's the next, scam that can be run, if you will.
Right.
He's got his ship that's got the cargo components. He does some horseback riding as well in the show. It's all in there.
It's all in there. I know. I can't believe that was just one season. That's funny that you bring that up. I mean, I haven't mentioned my good friend Boba Fett, but like that's a very cowboy thing too. Like where we kind of make some enemies and like. Even with Lando and his relationship, like they're both gamblers, and we'll hopefully get a little bit more exploring it in Solo. But you always like if you're a cowboy, you're either going after a bounty or you're being hunted, by a bounty hunter. So Solo definitely has that too going for him. Like there's some history of Boba Fett, and we don't quite know about it too much, but it definitely seems like it wasn't their first encounter, So, yeah, and I think you get that too, in a lot of Westerns, Another modern kind of Solo type character is in the good old Guardians of the Galaxy. Peter Quill, Star-Lord, Mr. Chris Pratt has a very kind of Solo-esque style. Kind of out on his own, doing his own thing. But another kind of what makes Chris Pratt the everyman and kind of that reluctant hero, troubled past, doesn't really get along with anybody, but makes kind of like a motley crew, and that's what turns into the Guardians of the Galaxy,
for sure.
And
that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
That you make, just kind of this like troubled past, kind of a loner.
Yeah.
When you think of all the other, cowboys, they're kind of loners. They're not like necessarily like going home to their wife and kids and, mowing the grass or whatever people do. But like, or sweeping the dust. It's a Western,
wait, right. I got your point. I'm like, wait, they get the tractor.
Just
go with it. Yes, just go with it.
But yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah. but he almost finds a family. He finds a crew.
Yes.
Similar to Malcolm. And, I would argue the same would be for Han. Chewie is his family. He's gaining these people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then, he also, his starship is named the Milano, which is a nod to Alyssa Milano, who played in Who's the Boss in the 80s, because, Peter Quill's character is from the 80s. And it just suits, he has a connection with that ship, and it's like that's his baby. And that's the very same thing with Han Solo. I mean, like, the Falcon is like its own personality,
Right.
And that's what I find that fascinating, that a ship can have that much character,
for sure.
And it goes back to, that cowboy that like tames the wild horse, or, it's only that horse connects with him and not anybody else, or, has a temper of its own. And the Falcon is living proof of that, just like has history. And we get to see, we were freaking out about like the clean, the sparkling brand new Falcon, and how did it get trashed in such a short time. But it's just it's kind of the same thing, that kind of Western cowboy feel, where you have this like steed that, this wild horse that like only answers to him. And, they didn't have hot rods back then. So, fast horses were all the rages for a cowboy. But, I think it's kind of that mythos continues in modern film. And sometimes you don't see it right on the surface, but like, wait a minute, when you kind of pull it back, it's like, wait a minute, that you know what? You're right. That's why I like Star-Lord, because he's kind of like Han Solo,
Right.
But it's a different, again, it's not a direct copy, but it's definitely got those
got that healthy cockiness going on too. Like,
yes,
I'm Star-Lord. Like, I'm Han Solo. How do you not know this?
Right. You're totally right. Like, yeah, you haven't heard of me? Come on, Come on. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely Star-Lord has that swagger, just like Han Solo, so. Yeah. So, I mean, I think again, we're going to see that play out a little bit more in Solo. And I'm really interested to see if it does have that kind of Western vibe. Are we going to see that more kind of play out than just because it's Solo? It's it's like it's his movie. So are we going to see are we going to see that Western in space?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So should we? So. Yeah. Right. I mean, I'm interested to see kind of how that plays out, as far as just, not only the visual part of it, but like, it would be cool to see, like we talked about earlier in A New Hope, it kind of goes in a dive bar. I'm interested to see how the gambling kind of aspect of all that kind of plays out. And obviously he won Millennium Falcon, so it can't be that bad. Not too bad.
Not too bad.
So here's a question for you, Heather.
Yes.
Do you think the historic 12 parsecs run is a lie?
Oh. I've had no reason to think that it is a lie, because you just believe everything you're told.
Right.
Right. But that's so interesting. I hope that it's not.
Right.
But I don't know. I'm intrigued to know where I think your question is stemming from. If there's something in the Star Wars universe I've missed.
No, it's just so ingrained in our head, and the fact that they, they joke about it in The Force Awakens when Rey's like, isn't that isn't this the ship that made 14 parsecs? And he's like 12.
Like 12. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it's his one claim to fame, and that's all he's got, man.
Well, that's it's part of that's kind of what I was getting at. It's like it's part of the Han Solo mythos. Like, the reason that like the Kessel Run is so hard is because there's a lot of black holes, a lot of nebulas, and I'm kind of assuming based on what we saw with the huge tentacle monster, that might be part of the Kessel Run. I don't, it's hard to say. Obviously, we only got like a little bit, but we know we're probably going to see it in this film. And maybe it is somewhat fabricated just to get him some kind of street cred. You know what I'm saying? So it's just a thought because of Han Solo's kind of hiding from stuff sometimes. And I just thought maybe it got him a lot of jobs because he said, oh yeah, I totally made that. I don't know. Huh. Just
I have never thought of that before. Throw it out, man. That's what this podcast is for.
Right. Not trying to blow your brain too much tonight.
Right.
Just thought, because again, like by the time we meet Han Solo in A New Hope, he's like very self-assured, stuck in himself, and he knows who he is, and he's got that swagger like we just talked about. But like part of that is like what happens, maybe he is, we see him kind of develop obviously through the original trilogy, and he finds something more than himself, in that process. But part of building up yourself is you might have to lie a little bit, to get those
stretch
get
the
those
truth,
jabs.
maybe.
Yeah, just a smidge. So
yeah.
So, but yeah, I think Solo is definitely our modern day space cowboy, and it's going to be cool to kind of see that play out a little bit more in Solo.
Totally.
So there you have it, man. So space cowboy, Han Solo.
Confirmed. Yes.
Confirmed. All right. Moving on to the news of the week.
And now, the Star Wars news of the week.
All right, Heather.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if you heard about this, but Hasbro has kind of started like its own Kickstarter program. And it's called HasLabs, and that's their new fancy name for it.
Okay.
So for a mere $499, you could invest in getting a 3 3/4 Jabba's sail barge. So this kind of came out of there's a recent toy fair that just happened. I think it was in New York, if I'm not mistaken, but this news came out of it like they're basically saying it's like a proof of concept, so you, the avid Star Wars fan, if you invest in this, will actually mass produce it, for those people that so it's kind of like a collector's kind of edition thing,
Sure.
It's super huge. It's like
I would hope for $499.
Right. It's going to weigh like 14 pounds. It's going to be like huge, and it only comes with one figure, and it comes with Jabba. Like I feel like they should throw in a couple extra guys so you can kind of like reenact the whole scene, But yes. Yeah. For 500 bills, you could own your Jabba sail barge.
All right.
So, it's kind of interesting. Like a major toy company be like, yeah, we're not really going to produce this, but if you really, really want it,
Right.
you can pledge for it, you know? And, it's kind of,
It's an interesting concept, though, if I can step it back. This idea, don't just start mass producing something.
right.
You know, to almost try to get a feel if people really want it.
Yes.
That's an interesting concept in like the toy industry. So that is fascinating on its own,
right.
But
so you can go
throw somebody other than Jabba in there. You got to at least have two characters so they can interact with each other.
Right. So you can go to HasbroLab.com and you can look at it, and they kind of have like a 3D model already sketched, you know, like kind of like here's what it looks like, kind of proof of concept. And they're looking for 5,000 backers to back this up. And as of this recording, there's 1,952.
Okay.
So they got till April 3rd to kind of pull the trigger on this. But it does look pretty sweet. It's going to be almost 50 inches long and 17 inches tall, and it's going to weigh about almost 14 pounds. So it's kind of, it's large. I mean, it's not, like you said, it's kind of an interesting proof of concept because, like, you know, as collectors, that's, you know, one of the things, you know, you don't want all these rehashes. You want like things that, you know, like what's the Holy Grail? And this is definitely one vehicle they have never done, you know, since the inception, or since really 83 when, you know, Return of the Jedi came out. So,
right.
Yeah. So there you go. So yeah, check it out, HasbroLab.com, and you can check out, you know, that. And if you want to drop a cool, you know, $4.99 plus tax, you know, then you can get it, you know. So
for sure.
The next news item is Black Panther. Kind of taking names. Have you seen Black Panther yet, there, Heather?
I saw it yesterday.
Oh, shut up!
So it's like fresh in my brain.
Okay, and what were your overall thoughts about the movie?
It's so good. I know that's really generic.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. Let's see. We're second weekend out. So what are spoiler rules? Has it been out long enough to say certain things?
Yeah, let's just keep it spoiler free. You know, you can talk high level here.
High level. So obviously we meet the idea of Black Panther in Civil War. And so it basically there's an element of flashback, but otherwise it's basically picking up right from the death of, I'm going to screw up all of their names.
Sure. But his dad.
The dad, Black Panther's dad. And so it basically picks up then with him going back home to Wakanda, and then just kind of going through the ritual process of him becoming king. And it has visually, people sit down. It is incredible. I mean, you are really seeing this mix of African culture in a very accessible way with sci-fi. Yeah. It's incredible. I was, because I am who I am, was reading this thing about the costume director and figuring out how do you combine, again, the culture, but also needing to be in an armory for, you know, Marvel battles and things, and just done really, really well. And I think on a completely different note, other than just being a great storyline of the character,
sure,
there's some really great points just sort of if you look at it and you can see it, there's some great statements just sort of about culture and how we as, Americans, or non-American, however you want to classify yourself, wherever country you're in. I don't know if we're international here at this podcast, but
right, yeah.
Who your leader is and what that leader's responsibilities are and how we respond to that and how do we respond to other people who are hurting other countries and things like that. So, but handled meticulously well, where I don't think anyone will be offended. So go see it.
Cool. Yeah, go see it. Make it happen. I haven't seen it yet. I want to see it.
Okay. Go see it. It's incredible. And the one thing I'll say that I don't believe is a spoiler, but I said to my brother, I've never been prouder to be a little sister. It'll make sense when you see the movie. Gotcha.
That's good. I mean, that you're kind of keeping it,
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Just on the one side. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't seen it yet, but
okay.
I'm looking forward to it. All right. So anyways, it's kind of kicking butt in the box office.
It's a little bit doing really well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's doing really well. So, let's see. Black Panther's Second Friday also brings its 8-day domestic haul to $320.8 million, which is the fourth highest behind Star Wars: The Last Jedi and Jurassic World and The Force Awakens. So it's more than 20 million ahead of the fifth place finisher, which was The Avengers. So if it maintains its current pace through Sunday, so through today, it should become the fourth movie to break 100 million in its second weekend, which would surpass The Last Jedi 10-day gross and staying with arm's reach of Jurassic World. It's not going to match Force Awakens because that was a beast on itself. But the fact that, this is kind of like a standalone Marvel film is doing that well, really speaks volumes to what it's meant to, what it meant. It's just kind of an anomaly, especially when we're in, I think we're in the third phase of the whole Marvel.
That sounds right.
Marvel thing. So yeah, it's just, it's doing really, 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 really well. So
yeah,
interested to see how this continues. And I think, again, Disney couldn't be happier.
Sure.
But it might actually get people more excited even for Infinity War just because of how well this movie's doing, I guess, So.
Yeah. Well, and like any classic Marvel, stay through all of the credits. Just to touch on your point that you just made about Avengers Infinity War, just sit there.
Right.
Yeah. But I don't want to say anything. I don't want to ruin anything. But,
no. It's all good. It's all good.
In talking about the idea, when you guys were talking about Star Wars being so saturated with all of the movies coming out, I think Marvel's a good example. There are Marvel movies coming out of the woodwork everywhere. But I think Black Panther is an excellent example that if the story is solid, it's not going to make that big of a difference.
Nope.
We will go see it.
It will drive people back into the theaters,
Absolutely.
Obviously February is a slower month from a movie going perspective. So it is a smart move to release it there. But at the same time, if it wasn't good, people wouldn't go see it, So
yes.
And it kind of speaks volumes too, like just because it's a superhero movie doesn't mean it's just got to be all flash in the pan. You could get substance from it. So
exactly.
Yeah. So I have to see it. So I'll get there. I'll get there. But I'm glad you saw it. So.
Yeah.
All right. And finally, Mark Hamill is getting a star on Hollywood Walk of Fame. I know it took a while.
About time. Yeah.
But it turned very quickly into kind of a Trekkie versus Star Wars thing, you know?
Uh-oh.
So, yeah. So good old Shatner, who, you know, played Captain James T. Kirk on the old, you know, Star Trek. And I reading this article, I was like, what? He's 86 years old.
No, he's not.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
So Shatner got his in 1983, you know? So, so he's been on the block for a little bit, you know. So obviously Shatner have a little fun at Mark's expense, and like Mark Hamill is pretty much like a Twitter king now. He's kind of up there. He's always on the socials, which is great.
Yeah.
But basically Shatner went to social media and said the following: "Congratulations. By the way, asked for a star on the south side of the street. I'm on the north side and don't want to devalue the neighborhood." So, which is funny, but then of course,
yeah.
Hamill comes back and it's pretty good because he goes, "Thanks, Bill. It wouldn't be a special without a classic Shatner burn from you. Live long, but get lost, Mark Hamill." So yeah, so it's pretty interesting that you know, Shatner still a little Star Trek, you know, a little Trekkie little dig right there. So
for sure.
Yeah, but yeah, so Mark Hamill is finally getting a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. So that's pretty cool.
Excellent.
All right, moving on to Cantina Chat. All right,
yeah.
Heather, what's going on? Anything going on in your world?
Well, yeah, I mean, so just in general geek nerdom, you know, saw Black Panther, which we've mentioned, so kind of took all that thunder, but that's okay.
Didn't mean to, sorry.
No, it's totally good. Yeah, and then I actually rewatched Fellowship of the Ring from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and I was like, man, I miss these movies. And like the 3+ hour version, not the condensed version. Because once you watch the long version, you don't go back.
Right, exactly.
But just really loving that storyline again. And I was watching it, and I had a weird Star Wars connection to it.
Okay.
Just this idea that all of these different cultures, so whether hobbit, human, elf, dwarf, coming together, you know, to then see this Star Wars thing, you know, because now that I'm part of the podcast, you know, I start putting all these things together. You
kind of put that lens on. Yeah,
you put that lens on. You've got man and Wookiee, you know, and you've got Jawas and you've got droids, and they all work together, you know, or you've got, you know, the light side and the dark side. And, you know, when you're seeing the battle between Gandalf and, oh gosh, please don't judge me, Saruman. I was getting confused.
Yeah,
Saruman,
it's close.
You know,
it's close.
It's close. It's almost the same name. Yeah. But yeah, thinking of like the great battles between, you know, Darth and Obi-Wan, or, you know, you've got, most recently, when you've got like Rey and Kylo, and just this idea of these like bad guys and good guys, and them fighting with their staffs and kind of not really lightsabers, but you know, this idea of this extension of fighting. I don't know. That was my geekiness, and how much I've got a Star Wars lens on things now.
Yeah, well, and like Sauron, you know, just the oppression. Like the weights, and like how much of that evil is like spreading throughout the Middle Earth is very similar to how, you know, it is with the Empire, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it is interesting because it's like that kind of little guy versus the big guy type thing, and that's it's the hope. There's hope, and with hope and love, we'll conquer that evil, and that's that's definitely a big theme in Lord of the Rings, and also obviously in the Star Wars universe. It's funny that you mentioned that. Like, and when did that come out? When did Lord of the Rings come out?
Oh man, that's a good question.
I know. I because like the reason I asked that because Christopher Lee, who is Saruman,
2001.
2001. So that's what it like. He was Count Dooku in Attack of the Clones, which came out in 2002. So it's like you get to see him. This is a really awesome, Lord of the Rings trilogy, and then he's in Attack of the Clones. And you're like, dude, this guy's like for an old guy, totally slaying it. Like, great career choice. Like, I'll be a bad guy. I'll be a bad guy in this Lord of the Rings trilogy. And then like the next year, I'll be the bad guy in the Star Wars franchise. It's like, oh, dude, it's so good. And then his other connection is like him and the late great Peter Cushing, who played Tarkin. Him and Christopher Lee did like a ton of horror films together. Like, a bunch of different stuff with him. So there's that that there's another link to Star Wars, so so that's awesome. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. See, like, you're just like, oh yeah, this is like Star Wars. But you know what I really love, it's the same thing with Star Wars, is like Howard Shore's score on Lord of the Rings is so good. So good. Just like John Williams. Like, I just love Lord of the Rings soundtrack. It's
for sure.
It's tasty. It's really tasty. and I feel like too, like Revenge of the Sith soundtrack, because that came out 2005, and Lord of the Rings, was like 2001, 2, and 3. Just like it, I feel like there is I don't think John Williams copied it, but there's definitely a lot more like chanting and like kind of voices in Revenge of the Sith, soundtrack, that is kind of nods to what was happening in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I mean, I just love that soundtrack. Anyways, now you got me. I might have to like bust that out too, because I miss seeing it. So for me, just catching up on comics. Like, I have like a huge stack of Star Wars comics that I'm like trying to blow through. I'm not like, cause like comics come out Wednesdays and I don't go every week. I like go like every 2 months, and I have this huge stack of comics, and then I just like blow through them, so I'm trying to get through. I pretty much only collect a couple others, but mostly it's Star Wars. So there's a lot of like, lately Marvel's doing a lot of like 6 series, like they call it like it's like a little mini series. So they do like 6 comics. So they did like K2 Cassian, like six like a little mini series, and they did a Captain Phasma one, which was actually pretty good. I was surprised. I was like, Captain Phasma, I don't know, but it's really good. So I've been trying to catch up with that on the good old train ride. So that's kind of been my little, not too nerdy, but just a little, this week. So all right,
be nerdy all the time. Well,
I know you can't. Well, pretty much every day there's something nerdy going on, but sometimes I feel like it definitely goes in waves. Like sometimes it's like, oh man, all this stuff happened, and then it's like, still kind of nerdy, but nothing like monumental,
Sure.
So, yeah. All right, so why don't I wrap us up here, Heather? Let's do it. Okay. Thanks again for listening to another episode of WSTR Podcast. Once again, you can check us out on social media, WSTR Media, all one word, all lowercase. We want to hear from you. So comment, tweet, rate us on iTunes. You can email us at wstrpodcast@gmail.com. You could also leave us a voicemail at 630-557-WSTR. That's 630-557-9787. Operators are standing by to take your calls. So you can leave us a voicemail and we'll play it on an upcoming podcast. You can check out all our back catalog of episodes at wstrmedia.libsyn.com. That's LIBSYN.com. So that's all the ways you can get a hold of us. And I think next week we will be talking about Would You Rather. We'll play a little game of Would You Rather. So we'll be talking about that next week. So now this is podcasting. There we go.
Yay!
Yeehaw!
Oh, that's how we should have ended. Dang.
Yeah, I know. We should have, but that's okay.